right, time to get that Cornelius Custom Services 8 o'clock report up and running, and the taxi's pulled up, door opened up, and Joe comes rolling out.
Boy, the door was easy to open up after all that wind and dust and everything we had last
It was easy
night.
to open it. It was hard to shut it.
Boy, howdy.
I mean, it was pretty crazy, but yeah, you know, sometimes the cars have problems.
Yes,
you
they
know,
do.
I know that I've heard stories about SUVs and cars just getting a mind of their own and getting out of control and smashing into things.
Right, yeah, exactly. It'll happen from time to time. You know, luckily being out here in the Lake Country, you don't have big, subdivisions and so forth, huge, 1,500 home subdivisions. So it doesn't happen as much, but you'll see it from time to time. Somebody takes a turn, wasn't expecting it to be slick. Next thing you know, they're sliding into a house. And it's always a weird thing to see on the news or a story or something like that where, cars in the middle of a living room or something like that. And you're always like, oh, my gosh, what kind of a weird deal that is. But, a lot of times when that happens, people wonder, well, man, how does that work? Is that on the homeowner? Is that like a homeowner's insurance claim? Is that an auto insurance claim? A lot of it you have to look at and say, well, what caused it? I mean, obviously, unless the house was using a tractor beam,
right,
and wanted to have the car hit it, yeah, that'd probably be on the house. But in a situation like that, that's strictly going to be on the auto policy of the person that was driving the vehicle. So
even though, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, even though maybe there's some kind of circumstance beyond the driver's control that they couldn't prevent it, it's still on the driver.
Well, that's why they call it accidents. Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's why they call it accidents. And it's just one of those deals. That is when you're looking at hitting a house or hitting anything, that's where you get into a property damage type of situation. Most times on an auto policy, the first three numbers and that you need to have are bodily injury for individuals and for everybody in the car, and then the second one is property damage. And property damage typically means you hitting another car. So, we've had this discussion in the past where you're out driving, you hit another car, and the property damage limit is what the company will pay out to the other person to fix their vehicle. But in a situation like that, property damage could also mean anything else that you hit. So light poles, fire hydrants, houses, things of that nature. So it's really a good idea. We typically will start everybody off at least $100,000 property damage. And you'll hear people all the time say, oh, well, I don't need that much. I just need state minimums. We're not going to worry about it. But again, that's why they call it an accident. You can't plan for everything. They typically people don't plan to have accidents. And so, yeah, in a situation like that where maybe you're coming around a corner or you swerved and missed something in the road, next thing you know, you're careening out of control. Property damage is a big deal, and you want to make sure you've got enough coverage for that. Because let's just kind of go down the road with that, no pun intended, and say you do hit into somebody's house, and it's not just a scrape. Let's say your car ends up in the living room, and it's, a 2,000 square foot house, and let's say you've taken out half of it. Typically in Graham, you're looking at anywhere from $80 to $90 to maybe $100 a square foot. And if you've taken out half of that with your car, you could be looking at $100,000 to $110,000 worth of damage to rebuild that house. If you've only got $25,000 worth of property damage coverage, guess what, folks?
There's a difference there.
Yeah, there's a big difference, and you're picking up the check. Mm-hmm. So amazingly enough, we tell people all the time that the cost difference between having the right coverage and having just what it takes to get by is typically minimal, especially on a property damage standpoint. I mean, that stuff is relatively inexpensive. And, yeah, do people hit houses every day? Well, no, of course not. But there's accidents every single day. Mm-hmm. Had a huge one yesterday.
Yes.
Right around 4 o'clock just south of town. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the two people that were involved in that accident did not set out yesterday and say, you know what? Today is a good day to hit another car. It just doesn't happen that way. It's accidents, and you want to make sure that in the event something wacky like that happens, that you've got the coverage to not only protect yourself, but protect the guy that you're hitting.
You look at, I'm going to tell you, and I'll tell you right up straight, I look at an insurance policy the same way I would look at an IRS tax code. It means absolutely nothing to me. It looks like a big, giant page of numbers and stuff. And the only time I think we understand how much coverage we have is when we do have that accident.
Right.
How important is it for someone to come ahead of time and say, would you help me decipher this a little bit and kind of let me know what I'm looking at here?
Yeah, the best time, obviously, to do that, we typically will recommend folks to come in at least once a year. You know, I had a gentleman come in last week who we wrote his policy last year for his home and his auto, and he just said, hey, you know, I called him up and I said, hey, it's coming up on that year, and it's probably a good idea to come on in. Let us kind of go over everything. So he did. He's made an appointment. He came in. Basic questions asked were, okay, has anything changed? Still have the same cars? Yeah, still have the same cars. Any plan on getting any cars next 6-7 months or so that we need to know about? No, we're going to stick with the same one. And made any changes to your house? Adding a room on, changing a room, doing any kind of reconstruction? No? Okay. Any issues or anything going on? No? Okay. Well, if everything's staying the same, we went over his coverages and we talked about, well, do we really need full coverage? That's a decision the individual gets to make.
Right.
You know, if your vehicle's paid off, you don't have to have full coverage. Let's take a look. Let's run through some scenarios and see. So usually once a year, it's a good idea to kind of sit down with your agent. Your agent should be calling you. It's never a good idea, like you said, to find out, oh, I didn't have enough coverage after the fact. Because after the fact, you can't do anything about it.
Too late then.
Yeah, too late. So it's a good idea to sit down with your agent at least once a year, go over your coverages, and just make sure you're being covered the way you need to be, because stuff happens all the time. And again, auto insurance is one of those necessary evils. You have to have it, but it's a good idea to make sure you're covered so that in the event of an accident, they're not coming after you for the hard-earned money and the hard-earned savings that you've taken years and years and years to accumulate. You don't want to see that stuff go away in an instant because, you know what, I didn't have proper auto coverage.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's one thing about having the coverage. It's another thing having the right kind of coverage.
Exactly.
So make sure you go by and talk to them. Now, Joe, folks can get a hold of you. I know there's all kinds of ways to do that.
Multiple ways. It's 549-2525. You can call up. Brenda, Sarah, they'll answer the phone, maybe Julie, and just say, you know, I need to talk to somebody about some auto insurance, some home insurance. We also have great commercial lines as well. I just need to talk to somebody about my insurance, and they'll get you forwarded to the right person. You can also come up to the second floor of the Sierra Bank building and give you that free elevator ride up to the second floor. Come on in and talk to us. We can certainly help you out. One of the things I'll just mention real quick in parting here, we are coming up on a deadline for the end of the month for Affordable Care Act. If you're without health insurance right now and it's something you've been thinking about, give us a call. The end of the month, I believe, is the 30th, 31st? 31st of this month is the cutoff to get coverage. So between now and the 31st, the earliest you could get coverage would be May 1st. But it's something that there will be a penalty assessed to you at the end of the year, the way things are now, for not having coverage. So it's something to take a look at. It takes a few minutes just to kind of run some numbers, play some scenarios. Give me a call. We can certainly look at that for you as well. And you may have the ability to have some tax credits rolled into that to help lessen the cost.
So get it out at Brown Insurance. All right, Joe, thank you much. Here on the Cornelius Custom Service 8 o'clock report. Thanks for coming by and visiting with us. All right, we've got Bachman Turner Overdrive coming up and sports on the way. So stick around.